What is up, everybody? How are we doing this morning? Can I get a what? Can I get a oh yeah? All right, energy is good. I love it. So first off, just let me start off by saying how completely honored I am to even be on this stage right now. I remember 3-4 years ago at my first NET meeting, just watching some of the general session speakers and being like, maybe one day I'll be up there and be able to deliver an awesome message to this community. And here we are. So I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for being here this morning and listening to what I have to say. Knowing the caliber of people that I'd be speaking to this morning, I definitely brought the goods for you guys. So the title of my talk today is The Power of Personal Development. So show of hands here, who here has ever heard a personal development message before? A lot of you guys. So my goal and my intention today is not to rah-rah you to death, all right? My goal today is really to just share a story, a very personal story with you guys about some challenges that I faced last year, some lessons that I learned in the process, some lessons that helped me get through it, and hopefully you guys can take some of these lessons and implement them in your life whenever you have a challenge arise. So just kind of rewinding back to January of 2018, setting my goals for the year, my physical goals, business goals, financial goals, etc. And one thing I noticed that was missing out of 2017 was a strong physical goal. So I went to my buddy Brett Lancaster, who had just started running, and he lost over 100 pounds very recently, which is incredible. I was like, what a better accountability partner than that, right? And he comes up with the idea of, hey, let's do a triathlon, right? And I had run a triathlon back in 2016, raised a bunch of money for charity and stuff, but I got my butt kicked. So I was like, it'd be kind of nice to get some redemption, but at the same time, I was thinking, I'm like, well, you know what? If I already done one before, I should probably up my game a little bit. Let's go for a half Ironman. And if any of you guys don't know what a half Ironman is, it's a 1.2 mile swim followed by a 56 mile bike ride followed by a 13 mile run. It's not completely crazy. That's what Ironmans are for, but it's still quite a challenge. It's a 6-hour race and usually takes about 4 months of dedicated training. So it took me a couple months to wrap my head around it, but going into July, the Ironman was October 28th in Waco, Texas. So training started in July. July did not go very well. We were not super committed to all of our workouts. We weren't taking care of ourselves as well as we could have. But at the end of July, I went on a little personal growth trip, which for me is me locking myself in a cabin for 3-4 days and getting really clear on who I was, what my values were, where I was going, and recommitting to my goals. So I really decided to recommit to this thing with every ounce of my soul. So I decided I would not miss a single workout for the next 3 months. I wasn't going to touch a sip of alcohol for 100 days, which wasn't hard because I don't like to party anyways. But, and then also I was going to be really, really committed to making sure I just crushed this thing and I was fully prepared. So going into August, I flew back to Massachusetts to see my family, shipped my bike out. And the problem with training for a half Ironman around traveling is finding facilities. So I was literally getting up and breaking into country club pools in order to get my swims in. I was biking like 2-3 hours in the pouring rain through neighborhoods, to the point where my hands would be shriveled after because I'd be so soaked. And I was not going to make any excuses for this. And also like honed in on my diet too. I was eating like 90% meal prep. And going into September, I just moved to Dallas like 6 months ago. I had never worked the fairs before. For a lot of you guys, you know that the fairs are a really intense time of year, right? So I was a little bit naive, didn't know what I was getting myself into. But the peak of our training was right during the State Fair of Oklahoma and Texas. So going to the State Fair of Oklahoma, I was a little rattled. I was getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, going on bike rides, working a 12-hour day, then going on a run at midnight after, and waking up and doing it all over again. I remember one really challenging thing was the busiest day of the Oklahoma State Fair, the last Saturday. Brett and I got up at 3 in the morning and I did not feel very good. But we powered through a 3.5-hour bike ride that morning. And then I went to the fair for the busiest day. By the time I got to the fair, I was not in good shape. I was so sick and delirious, I literally couldn't even talk to customers. So Brian basically sent me home on the busiest day of the fair, which broke me for a moment. But I just chalked it up as one of those challenges that I needed to move past and went into the State Fair, Texas. Going to the Fair, Texas, same type of craziness. Up super early, in bed super early, just CPO and training. That was pretty much my only focuses. Just to give you an idea of what my schedule looked like during this time, there was one stretch I went through. The busiest day of the Texas State Fair was the Texas OU game. I woke up at 2 in the morning that morning, went on a 4-hour bike ride, followed by a 30-minute run, worked 8 hours at the fair, and then went to a concert right after and got back at around midnight. So I was awake for about 22 hours this day. Gets better. The next morning, I woke up and ran a half marathon for 2 hours and then worked a 12-hour day at the fair. That's just to give you an idea of what my schedule looked like and how committed I was to this freaking thing. So State Fair Texas ends. There's 1 week before our Ironman. I'm tapering down my training. I'm a psycho about what I'm putting into my body, making sure I'm in peak condition. Just to give you guys an idea, like I was ripped out of my mind. I had the best shape of my life. I was running 8-minute miles in like recovery zone, which I was, busting my butt when I started training to run a 10.5-minute mile. And then also my VO2 max, which measures your fitness, was at a 57, which was in the top 5% of my age and gender. So I was basically a beast of a human, ready to absolutely crush this thing, right? So anyways, the day before the Ironman, or the half Ironman, Brett and I drive down to Waco, Texas, and we get on the road to do a quick little bike ride around some of the country roads. This is where things got crazy. So on our way to drop our bikes off, we get in a little bit of trouble. We're driving down a country road, and there's 2 cars in front of us and a street sweeper. And the street sweeper pulls off to the side of the road like it's gonna stop. So we go to pass it. This street sweeper, with no turn signal or anything, does a U-turn in the middle of the road while we're trying to pass it, unexpectedly. First thought in my mind, we're gonna die. I was like, we're going too fast at this point. If we T-bone this thing, we're dead. So Brett saved our life, and he veered super duper hard left, and to avoid the street sweeper at all costs. The street sweeper ended up hitting the back passenger side, which I was on, of the car, and sent us flipping down an embankment. So the car rolled about 2-3 times. And fight or flight is a real thing, guys, by the way. I remember something popped into my head I was like, you know what? Drunk drivers never get injured in accidents because they loosen up. I wasn't drunk at the time, obviously, but I loosened up and kind of went with the flow. And I only had a broken finger as far as like bruises and breaks and stuff like that. The main problem was when the street sweeper hit the car, it hit the gas tank. And the gas tank exploded, which kind of like a bomb, roasted the whole right side of my body. So I landed in the back seat, which was also on fire. I think that's where a lot of my harsher burns came from on my arm and my shoulder. And I pushed Brett forward. I pushed his face into the windshield, which, sorry, buddy, I was on fire. And then I jumped out the driver's side window and landed in a pile of mud. And I got up immediately, and I just said, please have Brett be alive. That was the only thing I cared about. And I saw him yelling at me from the front window. That I was very grateful. So anyways, I start running up and down the street trying to keep my adrenaline up. And because when you're burned, the pain will set in as soon as your adrenaline goes down. They throw me in an ambulance and bring me to the Waco Hospital. Waco Hospital is quite a scene. they wrap me up, clean me off, take care of my burns and stuff. And they diagnosed me with second-degree burns on 15% of my body. My right arm, underarm, left arm, shoulder, and then my face. So anyways, they tried to dismiss me, which was crazy. They told me I didn't, to meet the qualifications to stay overnight. So I was like, how am I going to get back to Dallas? How am I going to take care of myself? So I called my family. I called my parents. I said, hey guys, I was in an accident. I'm alive, but I'm pretty burned. And they said, we're on our way to the hospital. I said, no, you're not. I'm like, you live in Boston. They're like, no, we flew into Austin yesterday, actually, to watch you run your Ironman tomorrow. That's when I got all welled up because, they came to surprise me. I surprised them, right? So, but anyways, my sister had literally just moved to Austin, Texas a month ago, thank God. So they brought me down to Austin. They took care of me for, 3 days. We were washing and dressing my burns every day. And it was me, my stepdad, my mom, my little brother, and my little sister. And the pain got so bad to the point where we had to bring me to the burn clinic in Dallas, and they took care of me there. Then I went right back down to Austin, and my sister took care of me for that week. Did anybody see me at CSP retreat, by the way? That was literally a week after my accident. Quite a painful plane ride. I remember Carlton shoving drugs down my throat so I could get through it. But it was quite an experience. But that's how much I love you guys. I was excited to go see my second family. And Brian Carter actually drove 3 hours down from Dallas and 3 hours back in the same day just to get me to my flight. Love you, man. So anyways, the recovery process has been interesting. And it's been solid since the CSP retreat. I've been on the up and up, but I handled it a lot better than I would have before I started investing in myself. Josh, Dave Bush, and Brian asked me to give this talk because what normally would have broken people emotionally, physically, financially, I powered through this thing. And mentally, I never went into a state of depression. I kept a level head throughout most of the whole thing. Business-wise, I went out to have the second biggest month of my career, literally 4 weeks after my accident. Physically, I was given 6 to 8 weeks to heal before I had full range of motion and stuff like that. And I healed in 3 to 4 weeks just because of everything I'd learned on how to take care of my body. And financially, for the loss of income I had for the month of November, I had an emergency fund. Thank you, Dave Ramsey, right? And I decided to give this accident a different meaning than everything's coming crumbling down around me, even though it felt like that sometimes. This was due to the investment I had made in myself over the years and the lessons that I've been taught over and over and over again. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to share some of the lessons that I've learned that have helped me get through this process. Would you guys be interested in hearing about that? Yeah. Oh, come on. Dave told me I was going to have quite a group this morning. You guys interested in hearing about these lessons? That's better. Awesome. So take out your notes. I have a couple of lessons for you guys to jot down. First thing is fall in love with the process, not the end result. This is why I was able to push myself through every morning, every day, every week. It wasn't about the medal and it wasn't about the race for me. It was about the man that I was becoming in the process. I learned this from my original DVM, Ryan Trembler, a long time ago, and coaching with Josh Muller really ingrained it into my head. So I got the question, weren't you depressed and upset about not being able to race? I mean, you put your heart and soul into this for 4 months. And my answer was always no. I wasn't destroyed over not being able to race because I got what I really wanted out of just training. I actually had 70.3 reasons why written down on a notebook that got me through those tough mornings when I didn't want to get out of bed, right? And probably 2 of those reasons had anything to do with finishing the race of the medal. So I already had the mindset that no matter how the race went, I was going to show up at my best that day and put full effort into training, knowing that I had done everything that I could to prepare. So fall in love with the process. Second is control of emotions. Choose how you're going to react. Look at the facts and decide how you're going to feel about what happens to you. Initial emotional reactions are human. They're inevitable, but you need to ask yourself why you're feeling that right after and ask yourself if it's serving you or it's justified. I just realized that me being angry, upset, feeling self-pity was not serving me. It's not like those feelings didn't come up, but I just made a decision to replace them as quick as I could. It's in times of crisis that we learn who we really are. Forget where I got that quote from, but I love it. And I was told by my family members and my friends that I exuded 2 things throughout the process, and that was gratitude and persistence. But that was a conscious choice of mine. So control of emotions was something I've spent hours and hours of mental training on throughout my personal development over the last 7 years. So lesson number 3 here is long-term versus short-term. My first question when I got in the ambulance is I asked, what is going to be the long-term repercussions of this based on what you can see? So a lot of stress comes from worry. Years ago, I would have been thinking about all the ways that it could have been way worse than it actually was, and I would have assumed the worst. But I read in a book called The 4 Agreements to never make assumptions and always ask questions. So that's what I did. My mom always told me whenever I was in a time of crisis, she goes, all right, is anybody dead, pregnant, or arrested? I'm like, all right. The reason why she asked those are all irreversible things, right? So as soon as I realized that my injury would heal at some point, I immediately shifted my focus to healing. So if everything's going to be okay, there's no reason to stress in the long run. Ask yourself, say, 20 years from now, how is this going to make a difference in my life? What is this going to mean 20 years from now? And for me, all I could think about was this is going to make an awesome story. So for lesson number 4 here, focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. So when I got to the hospital and got my final diagnosis, they said I had 2nd-degree burns, I would heal. It was going to be very painful. My next question was, what do I do now? I first thought about and this is a thing that's always skipped over. I actually first thought about all the things that I inevitably couldn't do and decided to immediately come to terms with those. That way I wouldn't be frustrated through the process of healing. Now, of course, there were things that came up that caught me off guard. Like I didn't expect it to be so damn hard to put on a t-shirt for 3 weeks. But of course, there were some things that threw me off, but as soon as I came to terms with what wasn't attainable, I had a sole focus on what I could do and not what I couldn't do. So I could still pick up a book and read and expand my mind. I could still listen to audios and tapes and music. I could still call people and socialize, and I could still make progress in other areas of my life that weren't physical and weren't my business. So happiness comes from progress in something. And I knew all I needed to do is figure out where I could make progress in my life. So where years ago, before I started investing in myself, I would have laid up in bed, moped around, and had a pity party for myself. So 5th lesson here, pain versus suffering. The lesson I learned is pain is real, but suffering is optional. This I learned at a Tony Robbins event in Fiji and changed my life. So pain is what you experience in the moment, the pain of falling, the pain of getting burned, breaking a bone, losing a loved one, a heartbreak, a paper cut, whatever. But pain sucks, it does, but it's temporary. Suffering is the ongoing process of staying in the same state you were in while you were in pain. It's more psychological than anything. So for a lot of people, suffering is after the fact. It involves them being in a negative state, sad, angry, irritated, depressed, worried, anxious, etc. My agreement to myself that I told myself every day is I will endure what pain I need to go through, but I will not suffer through this process, period. So when you nearly die in a car crash, by the way, you tend to realize that life is short and tomorrow could be your last day on earth. I don't say this to scare you, but it's a reality. And when I came to terms with my mortality as a human being, I decided that life was too short not to live in a beautiful state. So I was grateful that I even though I lost a lot of physical ability, I had so much to be grateful for. I could speak, I could read, I could breathe, I could walk, all things that could have been stripped from me in an instant if that accident had been worse. Suffering just wasn't an option for me after realizing that, and also knowing that I had an example to set for people who will inevitably go through something like this in their life. I want to teach them how to handle that. So, next lesson here. Ask yourself, what is the meaning behind this? One of my favorite quotes you should all write down. Nothing in life has any meaning besides the meaning that we give it. This is a quote I heard from Tony Robbins at my first event that changed my life as well. I never knew until a few years ago that you could literally assign meaning to whatever you want, whatever happens in life, and you can determine how you're going to process it. So 7 years ago, at 18 years old, I would have given this plenty of crappy meanings. You know, it would have meant to me that cars are unsafe and I'm never going to drive ever again. It would have meant that the world is dangerous. I'm going to lock myself inside and not take any risks. It would have meant that I'm being punished by God and he hates me. It would have meant that I'm never meant to run another Ironman. Because that happened, there's definitely no chance I'm meant to run one. And it also would have meant that every other area of my life was allowed to suffer because of this accident. And I would have chalked it up as one of the worst things that ever happened to me. That was before I started investing in myself and working on my personal development. Now I know how to give things a better meaning. To me now, this means that there's so many people that love and support me. And this was an opportunity for me to see that at full capacity. It meant that you don't know when you're going to die. So I should live every waking moment like it's my last and choose to be in a beautiful state. It meant that everything happens for me and not to me, and God was just giving me the challenge that I needed to get where I need to go in life. It meant that I was going to have the comeback story of the century when I run another Ironman in April 2019. The first question I asked when I was in the hospital, actually, and I got up out of bed with all my burns and stuff, I'm like, when's the next half Ironman? Literally hopped on my phone and looked it up. It meant that I was that I was granted the opportunity to focus on other areas of my life for a few weeks rather than my business and my physical health. And ultimately, this is going to be one of the greatest things that ever happened to me because I will grow and learn from it and inspire others to do the same. Very different meanings. So there's 3 questions too to ask yourself in any tough situation. What does this mean? What are you focused on? And what are you going to do? What does this mean? What are you focused on? What are you going to do? It all starts with your meaning, so give yourself an empowering meaning. So Other thing here, where do you derive your value from? I read this is the other lesson that I really love. So I read in a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water that your true value as a person does not come from what you do, but who you are. What got me through sitting in bed for an entire week and being posted up was I'm still freaking Matt Foss, and I knew that. You ever wonder why people go into a state of depression when they lose their job, they lose their physical ability, lose their hobby? It's because we want to look at ourselves as this Ironman runner. We want to look at ourselves as a salesperson, the family man, the athlete, whatever. But none of those things define you. If I had decided that my value came from being a Cutco salesperson and athlete during those 3-4 weeks, it would have been a really tough week of recovery. But luckily, I knew that I could always find a new medium to express myself and add value as a human being. So you'll always have your mindset, your energy, your knowledge, your personality. And I came up with this quote when I was writing this, but what I really liked is we simply use what we do to express who we really are. That's simple. If you still have a way of expressing yourself in some capacity, you should be grateful. All the time, money, and energy I've spent on personal development helped me improve who I am, which is applicable anywhere, anytime, and literally anything. And the last lesson is find your silver linings. After the dust settled and everything got back to normal, I did something I'd never done before. I started looking for gifts in this situation, which I learned from my Tony Robbins coach. You can always find the gift in a situation, you just need to go looking. It's a great exercise, so write down your silver linings. A lot of the silver linings I had, my stepdad came to me and said he'd never been so inspired to see someone go through something like that with such perseverance and positive attitude. All I wanted, and one of the main motivators in my life was to set a good example for my little brother. And for him to come to me and tell me that, that next time he was in a tough situation, he was going to know how to handle it better because of how watching me made everything worth it. My sister and I got plenty of bonding time while she took care of me for a week. And I fully realized that even though we weren't always together because we lived in different cities, she was there for me when I needed it. And my family's busy. Even when we're together, it's hard to get interrupted time. We got to spend 3 full days together focusing on nothing but taking care of each other, physically, emotionally. And it was an absolute beautiful experience disguised in a very unfortunate circumstance. But everything we go through that just plain sucks, I think the purpose of it is so we can help others go through the same challenges and inspire others with how we react to those challenges. So to wrap up here for you guys really quick, I want to leave you with a few questions and a piece of advice. So the first question for you is, what is your personal growth plan for 2019? There's so much available to you guys as resources. I'm not saying you need to go drop 10 grand on a Tony Robbins event like I did, even though it's worth it. You could go buy a book that'll change your life for $10. I've personally invested over 70 grand between seminars, coaches, books, audios, etc. And it's moments like this that I'm truly grateful for it. But you need to have a plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So have a system in place, make a plan for your personal growth. Second question here is, what is something you can commit to in the next few days that will help you grow as a person? We're still fresh in the year, guys. It's not too late to commit to something that's going to make you better. Commit to reading a personal growth book that you heard about but never picked up. Get a coach of some sort, in or out of the business. Sign up for cross-training. Get a subscription to Audible. Make it a goal to listen to a Vector Connect talk a week. My goal this year is to listen to over 100 hours of podcasts. The point is literally do something. Tony Robbins always said that the enemy of execution is complexity. Personal growth is not complex. Just do something. Just get started. So I have one last piece of advice here before I leave you guys. My one piece of advice is don't wait. The reason I was able to handle such a devastating accident and time in my life was I was freaking prepared. The time, money, and energy that I put into my personal development over the last 7 years all led up to that moment. And that's what saved me through this, and I'm so glad I did it when I did. So challenges will arise whether you like it or not in life. It's part of life. So start investing in yourself now so you don't have to struggle through the challenges that will inevitably come up in your future. One day you guys are going to look back and you're going to thank yourself for the decision to start working on the best version of you. Thank you guys so much, and let's have a great 2019.